Hey, it's Allie Edwards and welcome back to my YouTube channel here. Today I'm going to take you along with me as I add in a few entries to my Around the Yard notebook. This is when I started earlier this year to document the things that are happening out in my yard, what my yard goals are, just great opportunity to have these kinds of stories all in one place. So what I'm going to be doing today are some photos, adding in some photos and some words from April. We had lots of daffodils here, lots of other things kind of starting in the yard, had a few tulips. I've printed out a few different photos here. This one I'm going to use at some point, probably in one of these square sections. And then I have a few more, this one of the yard and this one of one of the cats in the yard and the wisteria. I'm going to make this into a spread in there and then probably put something in the inside. Same with this one in the backyard. And then I have another one that has a full photo here and then two additional photos on this side that I might do on different pages with pattern paper and or additional journaling. So that is my starting place. So I'm hoping to do, I think, how many, 3 or 4 spreads here, or at least get started on the process of putting those together. I also wanted to let you know that I'm super excited because next week I am going to be starting a storytelling with stamping series, or storytelling with stamps series. I've got 9 videos ready to go for you guys. They're gonna come one day at a time, so you'll be seeing those happen starting sometime next week. I'm not sure exactly which day it's gonna start on, whether it's gonna be Monday or Tuesday, but then it will go for the following 9 days. So today, focusing on my garden notebook, and let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, diving in here, one of the first things I did was just measure that space in the square there at the top of the Art of Noticing booklet. Sometimes I'm using those pages as they are, and sometimes I am just covering it up. It kind of depends on the project and what I wanted to say. When I originally started this notebook, I didn't intend that I was necessarily going to repeat repeat some of the pages as specifically as you're going to end up seeing me doing that. But I really like it. Like, I loved using those plastic months, the abbreviated plastic months. I think we sold out of those. They were an add-on earlier this year. Having those, adding them onto a photo and then pairing that with a full page photo and then writing in some journaling at either the beginning of the month or at least as the entry point into some of the stories from that particular month. As you're seeing here, I'm not working on these throughout the month. I'm mainly just allowing myself to take pictures, and then I'm coming to this project at the end of the month and combining things together to tell kind of the overarching stories of what's happening in the yard during the course of the month. I think when I first started this project, I was thinking maybe I would do more in the moment sort of writing, and I mean things like, today I got a big thing of compost delivered, or, here's the list of the 5 different roses that I planted. And I might still do that in a really more casual way, but what it's becoming is it's definitely becoming a place for me to keep my photos, right? It's a very photo-centric notebook, and I love that about it. So here you can see I'm just writing in a little bit of information about April and how so much of April has been daffodils. That's really a big part of what April has been here, in that wonderful bright yellow. We've had a really interesting combination of some really sunny weather and warm weather, and then rain for a couple weeks straight where I didn't really do very much out in the yard. April's kind of like that, right? And especially in the day and age we live in. So I did add a little chipboard piece. In one of my previous videos, I've talked about how anytime I come across something that is garden related or outdoor related, chipboard pieces that could be like that, I've been putting them into the little box where I'm holding ideas and or things that I might want to use in this particular project. So moving on to the next spread, then I'm using one of these full page photos. I printed these. They are, I think they're 8.5 by 8.25. And when I do it that way, then I'm able to cut it in half to be 4.25 by 8.25. And that fills up both the pages in this notebook. This notebook is definitely bulky. It's just going to keep getting bulkier. I'm going to keep doing it in here until until I can't fit anything else in it anymore. But deciding here to repeat the same thing that I did last month, where I had the quote card from the March Stories by the Month kit. I'm using the quote card from the April Stories by the Month kit, plus one of the pattern cards that was included with that, and adding those in between my two photos. Just using essentially a little piece of cardstock. I actually grabbed this out of my recycle bin. I'm just folding it in half using a bone folder to get a really nice fold on there. And then I'm going to adhere that in between the two journal cards, or the pattern journal card and then the quote journal card there. And then that's going to get adhered underneath the photo, which enables me to have a page that turns here within the notebook without having to reconstruct the notebook completely. So it's a workaround in terms of using what you have and using what you're already adhering into the notebook to be able to create additional pages. This is a great way for me, especially when I really enjoy being able to have the full page photos in there and not necessarily wanting to put anything on top of the full page photos. This is a really nice way to be able to work with that. I have done some in the past. I don't think in this notebook I've done it, but in other notebooks, like in my summer notebook, I know last year I did a spread that had the full page photo, or the photo that's across the two pages in the notebook, and then I put a journal card on top. So you might see me do that again, just as one journal card. And that could have happened actually with these April gratitudes, but I kind of wanted to repeat what I had done last month and use this as a jumping off point for something that I'll do in May and June, the rest of the summer months probably for me too, following a similar formula, which is really nice then when you're going through the notebook itself to have some consistency, but it's definitely not a requirement, definitely not something that you have to do when you are building something like this. I think that's one of the awesome things about notebooks, is that you can make every spread different, or each page different as you go along. So that's pretty much what I did on that one. I did round the corners, the outside corners, and I also rounded the corners on the April Gratitudes journal card that I'm going to be adding in there. You're also seeing me use my X-Acto knife to trim off any excess that there is from the photos, and then just kind of flipping. I always do so much flipping back and forth in these as I'm making sure it's where I want it to be. Next step was just finishing up the April gratitude, so adding in a couple other little things that happened in the yard and things that I was thankful for this particular month. And I'm actually using a pen that we included with the Write Story Kit this month. So if you're a Story Kit subscriber and you haven't got your kit yet, you will be getting this pen included in the kit. And I love how these pens write. I think that they're just a fun little pen, and it's fun to have the heart on the top there. All right, and then as I finished up the journaling on this one, I do go in and add lines below each of them. Still definitely loving that in terms of handwriting. And in this project, in my Around the Yard notebook, I'm doing a combination of handwriting and typed journaling. So you're going to see a little bit of both in this project, which I think is always just nice to have those options there. Also, adhesive update, if you've seen some of my other videos recently where I was talking about rolling adhesive, I've been testing out, scrapbook.com has a new dot roller adhesive and a tape runner adhesive, and I'm actually really loving the dot and roller adhesive from them. That's the yellow one there. It's been working really well so far. So I'll keep you posted on that, but that's the one the one I'm preferring right now. That one, the Scotch one, seems to be okay, but it's not great. And this one seems to be better. So if you're looking to test another one out, I would recommend trying the yellow version from scrapbook.com. And I've got that linked for you guys below. All right, next I'm moving on to the next spread here. And this is the one where I had printed out 3 different photos. One is actually the view out of my closet window, which at this time of the year includes white lilacs and then 2 beautiful pink blossoming cherry trees that I can't look out there enough during this time of the year. And so what I decided to do with this one is I cut those 2, the tulip and the daffodil photo, in half so that I could create another turning page using the daffodil photo and then the April pattern card from the Stories by the Month kit. I considered using the Right Now kit for my journaling underneath, but I actually end up using a different one from that kit that you'll see in just a minute here that has a green leaves on it. You could totally, the Right Now one would have done fine as well. This is the one that I ended up using. It says current pieces of life, or current pieces of the story is this one. So this is going to get adhered below the photo of the tulip, and I'm going to use that the April card and the photo of the daffodils. Those are going to get adhered back to back, and I'm going to use the same technique that I used on that last spread, where I am using a piece of cardstock to be able to create a page that turns. And you're going to see that as I move along here, just adding those back to back. One of the things that happened with this too, the journal cards are 4 inches tall, or 4 by 6. Yeah, I had to think about that. They're 4 inches tall, so they're a little bit short. They're like a 1/4 inch short along the bottom to be able to be half of the page. So you'll see where I'm going to add in some washi tape along the bottom to just fill in those white spaces when I get to that point in the process. There's that folded piece of cardstock that enables me to adhere that in between my photo and the April journaling card there to be able to have a page that turns. And so far this technique seems to be working just fine for me, which is why I'm continuing to do it. It's an easy way to create these pages that turn within the notebook. There's that rolling adhesive from scrapbook.com, adding that in, and then I'm able to put that whole piece then down into the notebook. Definitely liking how that turned out. I also grabbed one of the tabs from the May Stories by the Month kit. So if you are a May Stories by the Month kit subscriber, you might have seen, if you've gotten this yet, that you got a couple extra sheets. Everybody got a couple extra sheets of these tabs this month, which is awesome because I love them so much. I've already used them on so many projects. When you see my stamping, my Storytelling with Stamps series next week, if you're able to watch that, I use these tabs many times in that process. So just getting it tucked in between the 2 pages there. One of the things that happened when I was doing is I ended up with a little bit extra adhesive on top of the photo, and later on in the process I'm going to end up covering that with a word phrase sticker from the April Stories by the Month kit, just so that it won't stick down to that current pieces of the story part. All right, here's where I'm adding on the washi tape. I'm going to it's going to move up a little bit in the frame here in a second. You'll be able to see I'm adding it below the journal card in both places. So below the April journal card there along the bottom, and then it's also going to be below the pieces of the story. Just needed a little bit more of something to fill it in there, and so that worked out just right. Next up, I moved into adding my journaling onto the current pieces of this story. And I think for this one, I just outlined 3 different things, like talking a little bit about how I'm going to be moving the daffodils out of the pots. Right now, I'm just letting their leaves get brown so that they will push all of their energy back into the bulbs. And then I'm planning to move those bulbs out into a different space in the yard. So I'm documenting a little bit about that. I think I also wrote on there how I didn't have very many tulips this year. I just did like 2 pots of tulips and really focused on having the daffodils. And one of the things that I loved about the daffodils that I got this year, which were from a company called Brex, is that the packages that I bought from them, they didn't bloom all at once. So they bloomed over the course of the month at different times. So I always had more daffodils blooming, which was amazing. So I've already ordered more of those same bulbs for next year, and we'll start those in pots again. All right, moving on to the next spread here. I am trimming down my photo. Again, this is 8.5 by 8.25, and then cutting that in half. This is a picture of wisteria that's in the yard out there, and a little bit of the purple lilac. And I also bought a new trellis that I'm going to try out with a few different things there, and then one of the cats is in that picture too. For this one, what I decided to do is I wanted to create a pocket, and I wanted to add more journaling. So I did that by printing out journaling on a piece of vellum, knowing that the dimensions of the pages are 4.25 by 8.25. So I'm trimming that down, and I'm going to leave a little bit of extra along the edge so that I will have something to adhere underneath the photo. The other thing that I wanted to do with this was I wanted to turn it into a pocket where I would be able to add in some of the flower tags from the flowers that I'm actually talking about. So I'm outlining on this particular story where it says right now, I'm outlining some of the perennials that I purchased recently and added into the yard, which were some bleeding hearts, some white bleeding hearts, and some salvia, which I haven't planted before, in my yard, and there was one other thing that I can't remember, but I outlined what each one of those things were and then noted where I planted them in the yard. So just more detail. So that is getting some of the facts of it in there. And then I went through my vellum that I've had, my vellum stash, and I found one that I've had for a long time from Heidi Swap. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting that to fit the back, and I'm going to stitch it to the back of my journaling that will create a pocket to hold those plant tags. And that's what I'm doing right here is I'm just sizing it to the correct size, and then I'm actually going to run it through my sewing machine to create the pocket that can hold those. And I love this technique. You can put all kinds of different things in there, right? You could put additional photos in there. You could put notes in there. You could put a tag inside of there. Any of those things like that would work. And so then I'm folding it over, just getting a good fold on there before I take it over to my sewing machine to just stitch around 3 sides to be able to make a pocket out of the vellum with the front and the back. And there's those little tags that I wanted to be able to put in there. Just did a little video here, sped up version of what it looks like over on my sewing machine as I go around the edge there. Right now I have green thread on there, and any project that I'm doing right now pretty much has green thread on it. But I love how I'm having my sewing machine out and available like that, especially to create interactive pieces like this vellum pocket. So again, as I've been doing on those previous pages, this one is going to get adhered behind a photo. One of the things that happened with this, and I think it's a cautionary tale to anybody that might want to try this sort of thing, is that sometimes the vellum can crack, and that did happen to me here. So what I ended up doing, it's cracking along the seam where I'm folding it over and wanted to use that portion to be adhered behind. But what I ended up doing is I just cut off the part that was cracked, and the rest of it will be able to hold this in place as a page between that full page photo. So you can see I'm just trying to make it work, right? There's a lot of that happens when we are memory keeping, especially when we're crafting in a notebook like this, where a lot of it is just figuring it out as you go along. So adding the adhesive on there along that tab that I left available from the vellum, laying my photo on top, and then being able to have that page folded over, and then I am able to adhere that whole thing into the notebook there. So as a page, as a pocket page, essentially. Adding on my adhesive. One of the other things that I ended up doing too is I left space as I was journaling on the computer, I left space to be able to put an embellishment before each of the little things that I was designating. So I was talking about each of the things that the perennials that I had purchased. So I left some space, and I was able to use some gold puffy stars. They're actually gold puffy stars from the Star mini kit from December Daily last year. And those are going to get added on. I'm pretty sure I pulled those out in just a second here. You'll see me doing those. But I love how those tags, or those flower tags, go right inside of there, which is kind of dreamy. That's kind of what I was wanting to do with this kind of project too. There's those stars, just adding them where I had left a little bit of space before my journaling as I was designating the perennials that I purchased and planted. And I love it. I love this project so much. I love having a specific home for these kinds of stories. And obviously, if you're not into notebooks, you could totally still do this in pocket pages, lots of options for, different ways that you can tell your story. I'm just really enjoying doing it inside of this notebook. Now, I decided not to add any additional things on the back of the vellum. Here's where I'm adding that word phrase sticker on top. That was covering up some adhesive. I thought a little bit about adding anything else on there. The only other thing I added was how I'm excited for pumpkins in that location again this year, which is where I grew a bunch of pumpkins last year. So as always, if you guys have questions for this particular project, you can let me know in the comments below. And thanks for being here. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and look forward to a bunch of videos coming from me next week. And if you're watching this at another time, just look for the storytelling with stamps designation.